Hello and welcome to Gefet and Daf Yomi. I'm Yael Shimoni from Yeshivat Risha, bringing to you together with Adran, learning in depth with your Daf Yomi, and we're going to learn a big machloket of the Rishonim, Rashi, and Tosfot, and others who join them regarding a very serious question for anyone who's learning Masechet Moed Katan. Is the Isur Melacha in Chol Hamoed Asur from the Oraita or from the Rabbanan? So before we continue, I just want to stress a point regarding this question. I think nowadays, at least in my community, around me, the Isur Melacha of Chol Hamoed is not considered such a serious Isur. I think most people don't even know. Many children I know, many adolescent children I've taught in high school don't know that there's Bichlal an Isur of Melacha in Chol Hamoed. And what we're going to see learning Gemara, Daf Beis and Daf Yud Aleph is that the things are very different from what people think. So is it really an Isur D'Oraita? Is there anyone who thinks that seriously? Let's look at the Machloket Rishonim and learn interesting things regarding this question. So I'm beginning with Daf Bet that you already saw last week and opening with the Mishnah. And here the Mishnah says that you're allowed to water a specific kind of sadeh, a specific kind of vegetables and fruits, if there are vegetables and fruits that have a problem. What's their problem? Rashi and Tosfot say here almost exactly the same thing. Rashi says, this question, whether or not I can water my vegetables, it has to do with where am I growing them. If I'm growing them in an area that they don't have natural water, I must water them, because if I won't, they're going to die. And then I'll be having a very serious problem. I'll be losing a lot of money because of Chol Hamoed, and we don't want that to happen. But how can you do that? How can you do something that is asur if it's asur because you're going to lose a lot of money? That's not how Torah works. Says Rashi, I'll explain to you how this works. Go to Masechet Chagiga, and you will see there a long Gemara. And the Gemara in the end says that Torah gave Chachamim the power to decide over the Isur Melacha of Chol Hamoed. Rashi says, quotes, Mesaran hakatuv lechachamim. The Torah gave was Moser, the power to Chachamim to decide what is Asur and what is Mutar, and Chachamim decided that if you're not going to do Melacha and lose a lot of money, the Melacha is Mutar. Rashi and Tosfot say here the same thing, and it's a very interesting notion. Can it be that Chachamim can actually change a halacha from the Torah? When we read this, it looks as if this can't really be an Isur Torah, because Isur Torah, you can't just change them because you're going to lose a lot of money. And what does it mean that the Torah gives Chachamim the power to change? If they give Chachamim the power to change, maybe it's an Isur de Rabbanan. But if we continue and see what's happening in Daf Yud Aleph, which we're learning on Sunday, we will see that the Gemara itself seems to say that the Isur of Chol Hamoed is D'Oraita. Where does the Gemara says this? In Daf Yud Aleph Hamoed Bet, the beginning of the second chapter, there's a Mishnah who talks about doing all kinds of stuff with olives and melachot with olives creating oil. And it begins with describing these melachot. If I unfortunately have a grief or another problem that I could not control, can I still do this melacha? What happens if I'm grieving or if the moed came? And the Gemara asks, how could it be that the Mishnah is talking about grief and Chol Hamoed in the same Mishnah? These are two different halachot. It is true that if I'm sitting Shiva, I'm also not allowed to do melacha, but it's not the same Isur melacha that you have in Chol Hamoed. Rav Ashi says, I'll tell you, why did the Mishnah start with Shiva and finish with Chol Hamoed? Because the Mishnah wanted to state that not only Isurei de Rabbanan, which is what happens in the Shiva, you can do if you're going to lose a lot of money, also Isurei Chol Hamoed of Melacha, which are Asur Midoraisa. Chachamim said that you can do them if you're losing a lot of money. So it looks as if the Gemara itself says that Isur Melacha on Chol Hamoed as midiraita. And if we look at Rashi, Rashi states this and claims this and also gives us a pasuk. Says Rashi, where do we know that Chol Hamoed is asur midiraita? Midichtiv, says Rashi, in the pasuk, there's a pasuk that says you shall keep the 7 days of Chag HaMatzot. How do you keep 7 days? The whole 7 days are asur b'melacha. 7 days. 1 day of Yom Tov in the beginning, another day of Yom Tov in the end, and in the middle you have 4 days, 5 days that are asur, also in Isur Melacha midiraisa of Chol Hamoed. So here we see that even though it sounded to us in the first daf that it can't be that Chol Hamoed is asur midiraisa because Chachamim can change it around, here in the Gemara and Rashi says that yes, it is asur from diraisa. Is there anyone cholek on this? Tosfot here says, I already spoke in Daf Bet, but Tosfot didn't say anything in Daf Bet. Here, if we look at the side, it tells us go and learn the Tosfot in Chagiga Daf Yudchet. So let's do this. We'll go to Daf Yudchet. We'll learn Rashi there. We'll learn Tosfot there, and we'll see the big machloket Rishonim we have in this question. So I opened Masechet Chagiga, which is what Rashi told me to look at, and also Tosfot told me to look at. And here in Masechet Chagiga, we have 3 different options for psukim to learn where is it written that it is asur to do Melechet Chol Hamoed. The first pasuk is the pasuk that Rashi quoted in Daf Yud Aleph. Says the Gemara, how do we know? Minane Mile, where is it written in the Torah that it's asur to do Melechet Chol Hamoed? Tanu Rabbanan, says Rav Oshaya, from the pasuk you have to lishmor 7 days of Chol Hamoed, including Chol Hamoed of Pesach. So it means that also Chol Hamoed is asur in Melacha. And you have here 2 other options of Pesukim. Where do you learn that Chol Hamoed is asur from Isur Deoraisa? And I'm not going to read the entire Gemara because it is not our base Gemara, but obviously here it's written that it is asur midoraita, like what Rashi said in Daf Yud Aleph. And at the end of the Gemara, you have the statement that the Katuv, the Torah, gave the power to Chachamim. We did not understand how can the Torah give the power to Chachamim to create dinim of Deoraisa. So let's look at Rashi here. And Rashi explains the following. He says, the Torah gave Chachamim the power to create din Deoraita in 2 places in Yom Tov. First, it gave the power to decide when is there Yom Tov. How do we know that? Because of Ibur HaChodesh. Based in Chachamim decide which day is Asur in Melacha. So that's one thing, that the Torah really gave the power to Chachamim. And the second thing is also it gave the power to Chachamim to decide which Melacha is Asur. So Rashi has no problem with saying that Mesar Makatuv Chachamim means that there's some Dinei Doraita that Chachamim actually create and tell us what is Asur and what is Mutar mi deoraita. So, is there anyone else that thinks, like Rashi, that this is Asur mi deoraita, Isurei Melacha and Chol Hamoed, and that Mesara Makatuv Chachamim means that Chachamim can tell us what is Asur midoraita? So the answer is yes. And if we look at the Ritva in the beginning of our Masechta, Moed Katan, the Ritva tells us there's a big machloket between my rabbis, a big machloket. On one hand, I have Rashi and I have Ramban, that both of them think that Isur Melacha and Chol Hamoed is mi deoraisa. And, says the Ritva, Ramban adds another proof to the Shita of Rashi. What's the other proof? In Masechet Avodah Zarah, it is written that you cannot give your sadeh or your merchatz or anything that belongs to you, your store, to a person who can work on Chol Hamoed, a non-religious person, a non-Jewish person, a kuti. Why? Because people will see the stores open and they will think that you're working on Chol Hamoed. That's lifnei iver lo titan michshol. You're causing people to think that you're being over an isurim. You're not allowed to do that. Says the Ritva, this deen of lifnei iver lo titan michshol, that people might think that you're doing an isur, that is only relevant to Isur Deoraisa. So here we have another Gemara and another Masechta that proves that the Isurim of Chol Hamoed are Isur Deoraisa. So we see it's Rashi, it's Ramban and Ritva together, stand together, 3 big Rishonim as one to say that Isur Melacha and Chol Hamoed are Isurim Midoraita. What does this mean? Anything that is not Letzorech Hamoed, not to help the actual Chag, or is not Davar Aved, that you're not losing money for, it is Asur Midoraita to do these Melachot. That's what Rashi and Ramban and Ritva think. So who is Cholek? Ritva told us there is a big machloket here. Who is the big Cholek? So big surprise. The big cholek is Tosfot. So Tosfot in our Masechta didn't say what he thinks, but if we open Chagiga, like Masoret Hashas told us, we will see that Rabbeinu Tam thinks that this cannot be true. Rabbeinu Tam has a very big question. Rabbeinu Tam asks, I know what Rashi said, and I'm reading this Gemara that says that there are psukim to explain to us why this melacha is asur, but, says Rabbeinu Tam, Isurei Doraisa don't look this way. Isurei Doraita are not a little bit okay and a little bit not okay. A little mutar, a little asur. That's Isurei Dorabanan. That's how they look like. That's not Isurei Doraita. So Melech and Chol Hamoed cannot be that. If something is so fluid, it is not asur midoraita. But how will Rabbeinu Tam deal with the three proofs that we had for the Shita of Rashi and Ramban? A, the Gemara in Moed Katan Yud Aleph. B, the Gemara in Chagiga Yud Chet. C, the Gemara in Avodah Zara. What will Tosfot say about these three things? So first of all, we'll see that Tosfot is not alone. The Ritva continues and tells us that Baal HaChol Dorot and Rabbeinu Moshe are together with Rabbeinu Tam, and that's also the pasking of the Tosfot that Isurei Melacha B'Chol Hamoed are midirabanan. So how do they read the Gemara? We will use the Ritva in order to answer this question, and I'll tell you just the details regarding these three proofs. A says, Rabbeinu Tam, the psukim in Masechet Chagiga are asmachta. It's not really written there, it's just connected there. B, Lifnei Iver, that is because this is a special Isur D'Rabbanan. It looks as if it is written mideoraita. What does that mean? The Tosfot says the tzdukim that go according to Torah Shabichtav, they think that Chol Hamoed is asur be'isur melacha because that's how they read the pesukim. And maybe that's also what Rav Ashi said, that it's deraisa. It's not really deraisa. It's ke'ein deraisa. It sounds like deraisa, but it's not deraisa. And that's why it has an isur of lifnei iver titem michshol. So let's look at this big machloket and learn three things out of it. The first thing that Rashi and Tosfot are cholkim, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, Rashi, Ramban, and Ritva with halachot dot Rabbeinu Tam and Rabbeinu Moshe, is whether or not Isur Melacha and Chol Hamoed is the Raisa or the Rabbanan. Rashi says it's the Raisa, Rabbeinu Tam says no, it's the Rabbanan. Rashi says it's the Raisa, and God gave Chachamim the power to create a very fluid din de Raisa. Rabbeinu Tam says no. If something is deraisa, it cannot be fluid, and Chachamim don't have the power to create fluidity in Hilchot deraisa. See, Rashi thinks Lifnei Iver is only in Dinei deraisa, and Tosfot, Rabbeinu Tam has a big chidush, and he says if something looks as if it's deraisa, it will also have an isur Lifnei Iver lo titen michshol. What we've learned from both of them is Isurei Chol Hamoed are very serious. Either they're really D'Oraisa, which is what Rashi and Ramban say, or they look as if they're D'Oraisa and they have a special Isur of Lifnei Iver and Michshol. So what we batuach learn from all of this is that when we get into our next Chol Hamoed, which will be Pesach Be'ezrat Hashem, we must take special care of these halachot of Isurei Melacha, and anything that is not needed for Yom Tov and it is not Hefsed, we are not allowed to do, either from the Oraisa or a very, very serious Din de Rabbanan. So I hope we gave you a bit of a picture of the halachot around the Isur Melacha and the Machloket Rishonim, and now you can continue learning these two prakim that deal with all kinds of details regarding the Isur Melacha in Chol Hamoed. Take care and enjoy your new Masechta.